Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Striation 6 podcast. I am your host, Sam Trotta. And as it is with every podcast that I do, my goal here is to bring you free information to help you feel, function, look, and live better through exercise. And I'm very pleased to have my friend and client, Bob Wyatt, back on the podcast for the fourth installment of our Bob's Try Journey series. And before I do a recap of what the series is about, I have to know, Bob, is Cato still bobbing about? He
He
is.
is. It's a tough relationship to break.
Tough relationship. Okay, if you want to know
Yeah, he's
what
very
that alludes
supportive,
to.
literally and figuratively.
I like that. Well, if you want to know what that alludes to, you can listen to part three of the Bob's Try Journey.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, Bob's Try Journey series. Cato is a special character. We'll
Yeah.
call him a character.
In this
Um,
in this journey. Yes, he is.
so just to recap what this series is actually about, Bob has decided to enter his first Olympic triathlon, excuse me, at the age of 69, which I've described as a rather Herculean undertaking. I am his muscle system specialist for the journey, and we're using Striation 6's unique muscle system work approach to correct Bob's movement deficits that we found in his original assessment and any new deficits or injuries that the training for the triathlon actually creates. Contrary to what some of you out there might believe, training for a triathlon or any sport, it can be hard on the body, and while it can produce health and enjoyment and all that great kind of stuff, it can also produce wear and tear. So my job is to make sure that wear and tear is minimal and that Bob's system can absorb the training and actually physiologically and mentally adapt to it. So we meet weekly for our muscle system work sessions, and we do these update episodes monthly, give or take. And this is episode 4. Bob, how you doing?
Good. Sam, you say Herculean, but some days it's more of a Sisyphean task or undertaking, so it seems.
I think I'm laughing, but I'm just trying to. I want to make sure I'm laughing at the right thing here. Wasn't Sisyphus the Greek god or the Greek mythology character condemned to push the massive boulder up the hill every day, only to have it roll back down every night, like for all of eternity? And is that you sort of whining at me here, or what are we doing?
Yes, you're right about Sisyphus, and yeah, I guess I am whining a bit. But I can report I'm doing well, still uninjured from training. I'm continuing to ramp up my duration in the pool and on the bike. Gotta say, I'm really looking forward to riding outside rather than in the gym. Um, One, just because of the boring factor with a stationary bike. It happens even with great music piped into your brain through earbuds. Um, but also, it's somewhat embarrassing how much I sweat by the 2 minute mark on the bike. I'm like a garden soaker hose pedaling away, oozing all over the bike and the floor beneath. And I'm just 2 feet, a couple of feet away from other much more pristine people. Have I painted a graphic enough picture for you of what my bike riding is like?
Yeah, some might say too graphic. Some of our listeners out there
Well,
might think too
by
graphic.
by the end of the bike session, I'm imagining, thought bubbles with these kids beside me, just feet away, thinking things like, "Wow, is this old guy trying to attempting death by exercise?" But there is an upside. There's a 30-minute limit on the cardio equipment at the Y, and my tri distance is 90 minutes, so it's really hard to get all the time. But luckily, no one wants to ask the sweaty old guy to get off the bike. And for some reason, no one wants to get on the bike even after I wipe it down. So I would be at Striation 6 doing this if you have the right kind of stationary bikes.
Yeah, there's some imagery lingering in my head at this point that argues against bringing such a stationary bike into Striation 6 for you. You've painted quite the graphic picture here.
I'm a little hurt, Sam, but okay, I get it. Okay, so I'm going through this muscle system process as a client, and I'm starting to do a little research on my own. into the isometric part of it, which is obviously a very critical part of it. And this started about 2 weeks ago, this idea of mine to dig deeper. When in one of our sessions, you had identified a deficit in my right shoulder. It was a movement strength deficit, and it was important to my swimming stroke, as you pointed out.
Mhm.
So deficit meaning not as strong on the right side as on the left. And I always keep telling you I'm right side dominant, and you keep proving that actually probably isn't true. But I remember you did just after you identified what the deficit was and what muscles were involved. You had me do one set of 10 to 15 seconds isometric contractions of the muscles, retested, and oh my God, it was like the deficit was gone. It was like magic, except I don't believe in magic. It's either deception usually or illusion. So there's more than enough of both of those things in the health and fitness world. So that's why I wanted to dig deeper. So, and here's what I think happened. I think somewhere along the line, I lost the neural linkage to the muscles that created that were involved in that deficit. Maybe it was through an injury, or maybe it was just compensating for something else that was some other dysfunction. I think your 3 sets of 10-second isometric contractions retaught my brain to fire the right muscles in an efficient way for that movement. So the muscles didn't instantly get stronger at all. They just kind of relearned to fire properly. And I'm thinking maybe this is what muscle memory is. So how close am I to your thinking on this?
Oh
How
man,
muscle system works?
how much time have we got? My goodness. No,
Well,
there's a lot in there. And there's a lot in there. And I think you in many ways sort of hit the nail on the head. We'll leave muscle memory aside for a second, but the idea with muscle system work and the muscle system specialist program is that when we're able to follow the data that your body or any individual given body presents us based on a combination of injury history, how well you move in certain directions, and then how well you can hold certain positions that we check out. What we're able to do is use exercise modes like isometrics. We also use, so isometrics for people who don't know, is basically creating force, usually against some kind of restraint. So in a muscle system specialist, setting that would be against likely my hand. There's also myometrics or concentric contractions where the muscle goes from long to short against resistance, and then plyometrics or eccentrics where the muscle goes from short to long against resistance. So a lot of people would call that last one negatives if we're looking at it in the gym. And oftentimes, if we follow the data properly in a relatively healthy system, the response that we get is it's quite literally in scientific circles known as a phenomenon. It's called potentiation or post-activation potentiation. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It potentiates your system. It creates the potential in your system to actually respond to force. And we leverage what you have available and try to install or develop what you currently don't have. And it seems like when we are aimed at the proper target, we're able to get what you do, we're able to derive a have or a can from a don't have or can't relatively quickly. The question then becomes, uh, how can you keep it, and in how many ways does it transfer to other situations? So that's where the role of exercise post session comes in. So I usually I give my clients, including you, some work to do, either in the gym or at home or both, to help maintain what we established on the table. And then the question becomes, okay, how well can your body keep it in more stressful situations? So we go from more controlled situations to less controlled situations. The most controlled being you lying on a table, sort of holding your arm over your head, to, all right, now you're in the water and you're swimming competitively against a bunch of other Olympic triathletes who may or may not be trying to kick you in the face while you're trying to use that overhead arm position. So we go from potentiating the system to actually ingraining that potentiated action into the system in a somewhat permanent way. I hope that's a big mouthful, and I hope it makes sense to everybody listening, and maybe we can get into it a little bit more through the conversation.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It does make sense. And it is pretty complicated too.
Hmm.
So you need to know a lot about musculature, right?
Yes.
Um, and a lot about when to apply what kind of activation, be it iso, myo, plyo, whatever, right?
Yes. Yes. And then what exercise to follow it up with.
Right. Okay. Yeah, cool. Okay, not magic and not muscle memory. I guess that's something else, eh?
And hopefully not illusion either. That'd be the
Yeah.
worst. Like at
Well,
least if it was magic, it would be a thing, right? But if it
yeah,
but if it
yeah.
was illusion, then it's a different story.
Um, okay, point number two, there was something else that came up in a recent session
Sure.
that I wanted to chat about for a moment if we could, because I thought it was pretty interesting.
Hmm.
Um, you made a comment that was something like, so Bob, in a case like yours where we're trying to prevent injury during training, we may never know if we've been successful. So I assume what you mean is that it's difficult to know what injuries you didn't have that you prevented, right? Um, Whereas in the case of injury recovery, it's pretty clear when you succeed and when you fail. So so how can you make the case for muscle systems preventive benefit? How do you think it would best work?
It's interesting, right? So if you liken it to exercise, I mean, by definition, you can't prove success for muscle system work in a preventive context. It's kind of like I
Yeah,
don't want to step on an atomic bomb here, but it's kind of like proving the success of the COVID vaccine. Like I got the vaccine and I never got COVID. It must have worked. Well, in the set, maybe, sure, possibly. And I'm not arguing for or against that particular item here. At least with like you can't prevent, excuse me, you can't prove success for muscle system work in the preventive context, at least with individuals. But over time, with a larger number of clients, like professional athletes, sports teams, or even just large swaths of people in the same kind of demographic, people in their late 60s looking to get into higher intensity athletics from an already healthy lifestyle. Some sports have a higher rate of specific and serious injuries. Hockey with groin injuries or basketball Achilles tendon ruptures. Excuse me. I think we would need to build a collection of preventive case studies, and a lot of people may not realize it, but if you're someone out there who's going through training like Bob for a specific and significant challenge with no significant injury to start with, that'd be unusual in a good way, especially if you don't excuse me, any other modality specialists. I might have muddled that a little bit. And what I meant to say was if you get through the training
right. Yeah, yeah,
unscathed and
gotcha.
get to the competition unscathed, that's actually kind of unusual. Injuries in sports are synonymous with one another, and they might be fun and they might be great overall. I'm not arguing against them. I like dangerous sports myself. I'm a jujitsu and judo guy. So, absolutely tons of fun. Keep me on the mats, please, please, please. That's the whole point of my training at this point. So, in a case like yours, the months of training are more likely to cause injury than the actual race. But our goal is for you to complete.
Right. Well, now I'm feeling that Sisyphean pressure to succeed here.
No pressure, Bob. No pressure.
Yeah.
Just everybody's watching and people don't forget.
Yeah. Well, agreed on that philosophy.
Yeah.
It would not be a stretch for me to make the sweeping statement that the health and fitness industry is a little faddish by nature, right? But I was surprised to learn in my research that isometric exercise has been around for like over 100 years. And I believe its last heyday as an exercise system outside of injury injury recovery was in the 1920s when a fellow named Charles Atlas had this dynamic tension system. This might be a little before your time again.
Oh, it's legendary. The 99-pound weakling guy that no one wants to be. Fun
Right.
fact, Charles Atlas was born Angelo Siciliano. So an Italian kid that gets into exercise like me tends
How
to
did
learn
you
these
know that? Did
things.
you or did you do research on him too,
I
or
actually read that particular point is mentioned in the Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding by Arnold, none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger. But
right?
it's a fact I kept with me for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, as a marketing guy, I gotta say that whole 99-pound weakling based marketing approach has done more for your industry, at least with men, than anything else ever. So pretty amazing.
Yeah, pretty amazing indeed. I love the riff that Robin Williams did on it in Dead Poet Society. It's a really obscure illusion, but it's one of my favorite movies. And he says to us, you may remember he plays a an English teacher, a really
Yes.
eccentric English
Yeah.
teacher to
The private boys
prep
school.
school boys
Yeah.
in New England, set in the
Yeah.
50s. And he says, it may surprise you to know that I started out as an intellectual weakling. I'd sit on the beach and people would kick copies of Byron in my face, which is just a perfect allusion to
It
the
is
dynamic
great.
tension marketing. Yeah, yeah, it's a great
There's
one.
one, that's one of the few Robin Williams movies I have not re-seen. I saw it when it came out. Yeah, it's probably time to see it
Oh,
again.
I've seen it an embarrassing number of times. Just an embarrassing number of times.
Right. Well, at least isometrics was the starting point for Charles Atlas. And then he added some of the other, as you say, dynamic parts or exercise modalities and plyometric elements. Um, but I feel like the benefits of isometrics are becoming a little more topical now. At least I'm reading more about it, even though there were so many other options for people exercise and recovery options that technology provides. But isometrics appears to have stood the test of time, and it's clearly not a fad. It seems to be the core of the muscle system approach. What is your history with isometrics, if you had one, outside of muscle system?
Well, so outside of the muscle system specialist program, at Striation 6 at my gym here, we've been practicing isometric exercise for, yeah, I'll say not decades yet, but more than one decade, as the company's been around since 2008. I joined in 2008, and we've been doing isometrics from the beginning. My business partner and brother from another mother, Brad, is he actually has a patented isometric exercise device called the IsoFit, and we run small group fitness classes on the IsoFit here, which are entirely isometric based. And the core group of people that we have in the classes at this point absolutely love it. And people are often shocked at how effective and how challenging not moving can be. And that's sort
Yeah.
of a cheeky way, like sort of a tongue-in-cheek way that we will pitch it to people is imagine accomplishing, you know, everything you want from a fitness standpoint, all without moving. Now that's going a little far. Depending on what your goals are, you may need to practice the thing you're trying to accomplish. So I would never say, "Hey Bob, only do isometrics, but then go do the triathlon on Labor Day weekend." That's silly. But as a strength and conditioning even component of your, we'll call it dryland training,
Hmm.
isometrics are a great option.
Well, I'm certainly a dedicated fan at this point, so I'll stick with it. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome.
Are we at an end,
I think so. That
Sam?
seems like, did you have any other questions or things that you've been
I
going
did
over
not.
since?
I did not. I'll let you do your sign out and I will do mine.
Fair. Well, I can't wait to see what this is. So, no, I just wanted to say, I think what you're doing is fantastic. And I hope it's inspiring anybody who's listening to this podcast series to, I'm learning more and more. I used to say age should not be a factor in how people use their bodies. And now I'm with the number of people in their late 60s and 70s, and even a couple of people in their 80s, and I don't train anyone in their 90s, but we have a few novagenarians here at Striation 6 continuing to get stronger and fitter. Age isn't a limitation. Yes, there's a relative, let's say, drop off from
Yeah.
peak points in life. At the same time, it's never a reason to stop, and you can make gains. So I want to commend you on what you're doing, and these podcasts are a pleasure. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Once again, I will attempt to channel my inner Danny Rojas as part of my sign off, and I will
Let's do
say,
it.
na 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 na. Yes, coach, I too am leaving now. As I always say, movement is life. And as you always say, life is movement.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for tuning in. Thank you,
Adios.
Bob. And adios. We'll see you soon.